So moved.
So moved. Any seconds?
Second.
Second. All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay, the ayes carry. Next, we have public comment on agenda items. 3 minutes per speaker. Is anyone signed up to speak this morning?
No.
No? Okay. Oh, excuse me. Yeah.
Would you mind please announce that Councilmember Donahue is a voting member?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we don't have quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, just a quick note, administrative note. To achieve quorum this morning, we our chair, Commissioner Miller, temporarily appointed Councilman Donahue as a voting member this morning of the Finance and Audit Committee meeting. So, Ms. Donahue, Councilman Donahue, thank you for making time this morning and helping us out. So, with that, we do have quorum. And next, we do have here, there are no public comments on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak this morning? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to presentations. And the first, I believe we have Steve Feigenbaum on county-funded service changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Steve Feigenbaum, Director of Service Development. We have a presentation for you today on our plans for February. During the Mission Max process, we mentioned several times that after we started Mission Max on October 8th, that we would be making some tweaks to it as we started to gather the data from the actual on-street operation. And we are proposing that February 25, that we will start in on the tweaks. We've already started to plan for different schedule changes, and rather than get too far into the weeds on that, we will have a write-up on the actual schedule changes coming to you in the future. What we really wanted to talk about today would be some of the service changes that we're proposing for February 25 based on the proposal of the county to provide $2.35 million in funding for this year. We want to give you a high-level view of what those particular changes will be, or at least what we're proposing if everything goes well and we do get the funding from the county. One of the things that these particular service changes will allow us to do is to get ahead of the game, so to speak, with our TDP. In our TDP for 2019, we have some of these same service changes already programmed in, with the assumption that we would be able to afford them in 2019 as our ad valorem increases kind of catch up, we hope. So that will enable us to go ahead and afford those changes. So what this will allow us to do is to get about a 7 to 8 month head start on those changes that normally we would have delayed until October or November of next year. So, and that will also get us going a little bit quicker on our ultimate goal of, maybe ultimate goal is not the right word, but of our goal in the Mission Max process to establish a baseline system from which we can grow and establish a high-speed 15-minute grid of about 10 to 11 routes that would be operating at that faster 15-minute frequency. And our plan is really based very much on our data and the return on investment which we expect from these particular projects. So to present the actual plan, I'm going to call upon our Manager of Scheduling Services, Philip St. Pierre.
Good morning, committee. I'm Philip St. Pierre, Manager of Scheduling Services in the Service Development Department, and I'm going to go over the proposed changes. On October 8th, we implemented Mission Max through the Comprehensive Operational Analysis, the COA, that set the baseline for our 10-year Transit Development Plan, the TDP. So we implemented that on October 8th. And February 25th gives us the first opportunity to implement changes based on make some schedule modifications due to some ridership changes, operational necessity, or if the additional funds were available, this $2.35 million that we're here to discuss. After Mission Max, we implemented some changes based on public comments and some operational issues we were seeing. The COA recommended a time transfer for one direction of the Route 19. So one direction would not go into TGH, the other direction would go to TGH, and there would be a meeting point where we'd have a time transfer to make that connection to Tampa General. So after we received some public comment regarding those changes, after we implemented Mission Max, we implemented a shuttle that would connect downtown transit center, Marion Transit Center, to Tampa General. So we implemented that shuttle to make sure that there was that connection. So we're in the future, for the future service change, we want to make sure that both directions go into Tampa General. With the February service changes, we would eliminate that shuttle and reroute both directions going into Tampa General. The airport shuttle that we implemented was because the Sky Connect over at the International Airport at the new rental car facility stop will not be operational until early February. So we had to make sure that the patrons of the airport could connect to that new facility that they built to the main terminal, so folks can either go to work or for travel purposes. So early February is when that's planned to be operational, and we want to make sure that we remove that shuttle and that Sky Connect. It's going to run every few minutes. It's going to be the nice connection to the main side terminal there at the airport. After Mission Max, we saw the need for 2 additional morning and afternoon trips on the 24LX from Fishhawk to MacDill. And that was due to the ridership changes. We eliminated the Route 27LX, so a lot of those folks moved over to the 24 with that connection downtown, adding the stop downtown there. So we recognize that there is a need for 2 more trips, and we've already been running that to make sure that we don't have any capacity issues. So we've been running that since Mission Max implementation. Also, we implemented a Route 75LX. It's a 2-day-a-week shopper on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it goes from Kings Point down in South County to St. Joe's South, all the way up to the Brandon Mall, running on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it's only 2 days a week, but we implemented that to alleviate some concerns down in South County. And those modifications, those were implemented in anticipating that we would get the funds from the county and apply those funds and put those in place to run those services at the start of Mission Max. Now here's the county-funded plan additions. The Route 6 runs from the university area to downtown via 56th Street and 21st Avenue. This is the best option for increasing to every 15 minutes from 20 minutes frequency. This the ridership on that route is showing about 30.5 riderships per revenue hour. So it is our most productive route in the first 2 months of Mission Max. So that's the best candidate that we want to bring forward to increasing the frequency from 20 minutes to 15 minutes. And we are having some operational issues with that route because of some routes eliminated in the area. The ridership changes. So in the early morning, we are having some capacity issues and folks are standing. So by increasing the frequency, we have more dedicated resources to that route. The Route 34 runs from Net Park to Northwest via Hillsborough Avenue. We're recommending on weekday we increase the frequency. We did increase the frequency for Mission Max. We would like to further increase it from 20 minutes to 15 minutes. And this would be, this is the best east-west route. This is the #2 productive route in the system right now. And that's about 26.5 passengers per revenue hour. And on Sunday, we would also like to increase the frequency from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. So this is a really productive route. And like I said, it's the best candidate for an east-west route to set up that future grid network. So if we had those routes running at every 15 minutes, we would have the Metro Rapid, the 1, the 6, and the 34 would be high-frequency routes of 15 minutes or better. The Route 46, we're recommending, the Route 46 runs from the Brandon Mall to the Dover Park and Ride via Brandon Boulevard. We are recommending to increase this route from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. Prior to Mission Max, this was one of the few routes that was gaining ridership over year. From fiscal year 16 to fiscal year 17, it gained 6.3% in ridership. And so we would like to continue that trend of increasing the ridership, especially out in the Brandon area and developing that ridership. So we're recommending increasing the frequency for that route. The Route 60LX was a brand new route we implemented for Mission Max. It's a limited express route that goes from the Brandon Mall to downtown to the airport, and then travels all the way to Northwest Transit Center. That used to be the Route 30. We're recommending from a service development perspective to split that route from Tampa International to Northwest Transit Center, split that into its own separate route, because the main concern that we've heard from the folks out in that area is it doesn't connect with the Route 30 at the airport very well. So splitting it into its own route, it gives us the flexibility to make those connections. And we're also recommending through this county-funded plan that the Route 35 weekday frequency go from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. So that's why it also helps to split that segment out so we don't have alternating patterns. We have a single pattern and a single route in that area. In addition, into the county-funded plan additions, we are looking at 2 additional hyperlink options. Currently, we have 4 zones serving the university area: Temple Terrace, Brandon Mall, and the Brandon Hospital. The 2 new zones would include a Riverview zone that would center around the Riverview Oaks Park and Ride at Boyette and 301 down there. And we're also recommending covering the Palmetto Beach and Ybor area with the hub would be Marion Transit Center. That was one of our, we heard a lot of public feedback about the modification we did to the Route 46 in that area, and we would like to bring back service through the hyperlink to connect those folks into our network. We are looking for an April 2018 implementation, and the reason for that date is because we're still working through the contract negotiations to renew that hyperlink contract. Here's the cost breakdown. For the already implemented services for the Route 19 shuttle, the Tampa International shuttle, the 2 additional trips for the 24, and the 75LX, it's about $561,000. The frequency modifications for the 6, the 34, the 46, and the 35, it's about $1.5 million for that. And we also have $200,000 dedicated to the new hyperlink zones.
And there's a quick question.
Yes,
so those are annualized costs.
This is the fiscal year 18 cost, assuming we implement that on February 25th. Now, since these are the top 4 options on this breakdown, they've already been implemented at the start of Mission Max, so essentially that is the annualized cost. But the frequency changes are assuming a February 25th start date. And here's the timeline. We're here today presenting this to the committee. On January 8th, we would present this to the board and request approval for the plan. On February 5th, this is kind of our go, no-go date. We plan on releasing the public notice for the service changes on that date, but we also, this is a very important date to make sure, this is kind of our deadline to make sure that we have a memorandum of understanding between the county and HART regarding these changes. So that's the date we're looking for, and obviously February 25th would be our implementation date. And here's this kind of scenario that we're in right now. So if the memorandum of understanding is not approved, we would have to discontinue that 19 shuttle and look for the alternative. We would continue to work at the plans that we would serve the Tampa General in both directions. We would also discontinue the 2 AM and PM trips for the 24LX, so there would still be a gap and a need for capacity issues on that route. And we'd also have to discontinue the Route 75LX. If there's any changes that are requested to this proposed plan, we would likely implement this in the summer markup. We're looking about a July 1st implementation for the summer markup. But if there's any changes that impact that February 25th date, what we would do is we would continue with the October service change, and we would just copy that data over. We would bid our ATU members. They would do their bid, but we would just use the data from the October service change, and then we would plan to make those changes in the summer if there's any requested changes to this plan. And also with that February 5th date, that also gives us some time to work with our ATU members. There's some contractual obligations with that. So that's why we need a few weeks out from that implementation date to make sure that everything's agreed upon. And that's the conclusion. I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Philip, thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Do any of my fellow committee members have any questions? Okay.
I appreciate it as a spokeswoman for Route 6. I thank you for
Thank
considering
you.
that. It'll make a big difference.
Thank you for the insight, Philip, and thanks for coming today.
Appreciate
it. Okay. Next on the agenda, we have presentation on legal services contracts by Mr. Burns.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Al Burns, Director of Procurement and Contracts Administration for HART.
Good morning.
This morning, I'd like to go over the process for procuring legal services for the agency. A little bit of background. The current contracts for legal services expire on May 29th of calendar year 2018. The contracts that are up for expiration are General Counsel, Workers' Compensation, and Labor and Employment. Board policy, and rather than read the whole slide, I'd like to just give you the kind of the meat and potatoes of it. The Board of Directors shall appoint an ad hoc committee to oversee the selection process. There's two forms of the selection process. There's the competitive and the non-competitive process, and later on in the presentation, I'll show you what the difference is of the two. The competitive solicitation process is basically a full-blown RFP process. The informal solicitation process is an abbreviated version of it. However, the main key factor in that is that the Board of Directors recommends 3 firms, and we enter into negotiations with the 3 firms that the Board of Directors recommends. Staff has met on the subject several times over the course of the last couple of weeks, and staff recommends the following: that we go through the full RFP process, 1 solicitation for all 3 disciplines. Evaluation criteria includes technical and price, and I'll show you the split on technical and price in a minute. 1 contract awarded for General Counsel, 1 contract awarded for Workers' Compensation, and multiple contracts awarded for labor and employment. The reason for the multiple contracts for labor and employment is we have 2 union contracts that are going to expire in calendar year 18, and staff might need the extra help and support during that time. Additionally, we recommend that we extend General Counsel contract for 60 days. The reason that staff recommends extending it for 60 days, and that would take it into, I think, the end of July, first part of August, is because primarily because of the CEO search that's currently being conducted.
Oh, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. McCann?
Just out of curiosity, with professional services, I'm not following why it's an RFP as opposed to an RFQ, because it's not like a project where you're soliciting somebody to give you a, quote, proposal. Aren't you really just seeking qualifications, or am I missing something here?
That's a great question, and I'll defer to, well, I have some thoughts on that, but I'll defer to Mr. Burns.
That's a very good question. In my experience, and maybe I might be mistaken, a request for qualifications is primarily geared towards A&E firms, not legal firms, but I may be mistaken on that. But that's the rationale behind going through the RFP process. Brooks method is where you request qualifications in the A&E solicitation. In legal services, historically at the agency, we've gone through the RFP process.
Could I just ask one follow-up?
Sure.
Do you actually receive proposals? I mean, what are these firms submitting to you? They're submitting how they would perform. I'm trying to follow, because it's not like one project. It's a series of tasks that you assign to the attorneys as issues come up from time to time, right?
Very, very good question, sir.
Yeah, if I may comment, I think it's a great question, and again, having participated in some of these, I'll defer to Mr. Burns, but I may be able to provide some clarity. But I think Mr. Burns, go ahead and.
Our past practice at the agency has been to do task orders, and there is there's a process to issuing a task order where we get, for lack of better terms, a quote from each firm. To answer your previous questions, we do receive actual proposals, and I'll show you later on in the presentation how those are evaluated. And the proposals, we get pretty robust competition. I can't remember the count for the last solicitation that went out, but we went out for general liability, personal injury earlier this calendar year, and I think we received maybe about 12 or 13 proposals on that solicitation.
Yeah, and I think, if I may, thank you, Mr. Burns, I think the remainder of the proposal will provide a little more clarity, because it is typically a proposal. Yeah.
So going back to the presentation. So staff recommends the RFP process. Excuse me, I went through that. The proposal evaluation committee historically has consisted of staff attorneys, the head of the risk department, the director of HR and EEL officer. And we've reached out to the county in the past and asked Mr. Fletcher for some support as a, I won't say disinterested party, but for someone that's a disinterested party to participate. And a HART board of directors must member for the GC contract as a member for oversight. In the last procurement, that was Director Josh Burgeon. And basically, what the ad hoc committee does is they serve as oversight for the overall selection process. However, in general counsel, they do serve as a voting member on general counsel, as a member of the evaluation committee.
Any questions on it? Okay.
Continue with the procurement strategy. The proposal evaluation criteria is broke out 80-20 or 80%, 20%, 80% on technical, 20% on price. What staff recommends this time is general counsel is a fixed monthly price. Workers' compensation, task orders with price ceilings, and labor and employment task orders with price ceilings. And the contract term be 3-year base with 2 one-year options. This goes back to what you asked earlier, sir, as far as how we issue out the work. Each time we have additional work for, let's say, workers' compensation, we issue a task order, and counsel, internal, and previous external counsels that we have on contract, they're very familiar with that process.
And Al, may I interject for a moment?
Yes,
because Al and I, Mr. Burns and I worked on these before in a formal capacity, and in my, just a clarification, and Al, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least where HART board members have been involved in the selection committee, we'll do a qualifications review. There'll be a 2-part proposal, and Al and his staff will keep the price, and we will evaluate the applicants based upon their qualifications and what they submit, and then later, after we've submitted our scoring, the prices will be revealed. Is that a fair way of describing?
That's 100%.
So I just want to make sure that was clarified. So
yes, sir.
There's a separation between. Yeah. Thank you.
As far as contract award, sorry for the redundancy, but once again, 1 contract for general counsel, 1 contract for workers' compensation, and multiple contracts may be awarded for labor and employment. Next steps. Review staff's recommendation, form recommendation on procurement strategy and proposal evaluation committee composition to advance to the full board of directors. So, Mr. Chair, at the end of the day, what I'm asking for is, do we go through the informal or formal solicitation process, and who from the board would you want to appoint for the ad hoc committee?
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Burns, on that note. So, are there any questions or comments or discussion on Al's question to us as a committee? Any thoughts?
No.
No. So, Mr. Burns, do you just a quick clarification as far as today? What you're looking for from us is, or are you looking for the ad hoc committee composition to be discussed at the board, or would you want to take specifics away today as far as I guess recommended or appointed board members? Can you just clarify that? Do we need to actually have a motion today to put something forward or discuss something tentatively?
Tentatively, yes, sir. The latter of the two.
Okay.
For a recommendation to the board as far as the ad hoc committee goes, and for if staff should go through the formal or informal procurement process.
Okay, so I think the first question Al is asking is informal versus formal. I have some thoughts on that, unless anyone would like to ring in. I think we've done a formal process in the past on this. Am I correct, Mr. Burns?
Yes, sir. And one of the things, it's a totally transparent process where the board of directors isn't selecting 3 firms for the informal, where the board is selecting 3 firms and we enter into negotiations with those 3 firms versus opening it out to the market. We do have evaluation criteria that has been used in the past. And once again, we garner a tremendous amount of competition through this process.
Okay. Yeah, I think in the past the formal process has been very transparent and is really, I think we benefited from it.
Yes.
So unless anyone has any objection, I would move that this committee recommends to the board that we move forward with the formal process, unless there are any alternate thoughts.
I would second that.
Okay. Thank you. All right, and it sounds like we don't need to do a formal motion. So as far as just administratively, Mr. Smith, do we need to? And I know this.
I'm trying to avoid saying very much because I'm an interested party, but at least in terms of your procedure, I don't think you need a formal motion. I'm also a little bit concerned about the status of the quorum as I've been thinking about it here. I want to make sure we understand that Ms. Donahue's been appointed in lieu of someone who could not make it as opposed to in addition. Because if we have an 8-member committee, we don't have a quorum. If we have a 7-member committee, we do have a quorum. So I'm understanding that she's filling in place of someone else. So we have 7 members. That's my understanding. I think there will be plenty of discussion at the board. You could go either way. You could make a motion or you could just send it forward with, you can have a discussion, ask questions, ask for additional information, send it forward with that. Okay. Then forgetting Ms. Donnie, would you like to move or make, I believe you wanted to make a motion?
I would definitely like to, I'll make that motion. I move to approve or recommend to the full board that we go through the formal process for selection.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay? Okay, none? Okay, the motion is approved. Thank you, Councilman Donahue. Okay, Mr. Burns, so next on your holiday wish list here from the committee is, so we covered informal versus formal. Now we need to look to composition of the ad hoc committee.
That is correct.
Should we move back to the slide, the historic composition slide? That might aid us in those discussions.
I have it up, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there a number, a committee, an actual number of people that's required, or can you give us a little more guidance on what you're looking for?
Yes, sir. In the past, there have been a total of 5 members on each solicitation. So in this case, we have 3 solicitations that we would move forward in the formal process, and 5 members for each. The composition for workers' compensation might not be the same composition for general counsel per se. Once again, as far as the HART attorneys, I would strongly recommend that we have 3 very competent staff attorneys in the agency, that each one of them serve on one evaluation committee. The risk manager, they would be responsible for the workers' compensation because that's more in their lane. The director of human resources would be on the selection committee for the labor and employment because that's more in her lane. And the staff attorneys from the county, Chip in the past, he's picked one for each discipline that is most suited for a member of his staff. And the member from the board of directors that's going to serve on the evaluation committee, that they would be on the I'm sorry, I'm a little sick this morning, on the general counsel evaluation committee, in addition to having overall oversight of the whole selection process.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Yes, sir.
I think for simplicity's sake, and it sounds like this process has worked very well in the past, I would move that we recommend to the full board the same composition as has been used in the past and as being recommended today.
Any other, thank you, Mr. McCann. Any other comments? I had a quick comment. I would agree. And I think, Al, that you pointed out that we have the staff attorneys, the HART staff attorneys, that can be distributed on each contract. I think that's good. So I would, so if there's a motion for that, would you like to move for that? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay, the ayes carry. Thank you. So we're not done just yet. I believe you had one more item on your list, and that was: would you like us today to appoint the HART board director?
Yes.
So is there any discussion on that item? And this is something that we could also, I believe, we could defer to the full board if that would be the pleasure of the committee, unless there's any.
And one of the reasons that I asked to do this presentation is because we have a fairly new amount of board members, and in the past, with the person that the ad hoc committee can consist of one or multiple board members. Historically, it's consisted of one board member, and they just made sure that staff stayed on the straight and narrow, which we always do during the solicitation process. But they were there looked at the evaluation criteria and disseminated that to the other board of directors so they can review the evaluation criteria and weigh in on the actual solicitation. Also, during this process, oftentimes for the general counsel, interviews are held, and the board member that sits on the ad hoc committee, they kind of oversee that process and just make sure that everything is done in a true, transparent manner. Director Burgeon, last time, he did an excellent job in directing staff. He asked a lot of smart questions and basically, hey, Al, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And some things we tweaked along the way for the pleasure of the board, but that's the general responsibility of the ad hoc committee, is to make sure that staff follows the process and to communicate with the other board members as he deems appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. And just a quick clarification. So there are 3 committees, and for this effort, the board member who would be a member of the ad hoc committee would be a voting member on one of the committees. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. There's 3 evaluation committees. The member of the board would be a voting member on the evaluation committee for general counsel. However, the general counsel comes before the full board, appears before the full board before being awarded. So it's not like the staff has the ability to award any contract to anyone without the full board of directors vote.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. I guess one quick question to the committee: is anyone interested in the ad hoc position that Mr. Burns has described? Seeing no interest. I'm swiveling. I'm trying to do it.
I would do that if there isn't somebody else on the board who would prefer.
Okay. Would you like to? Maybe we could defer to the January board meeting to discuss it. Would that be okay?
Thank you, Mr. McKenna.
Yeah. Okay. Would that be okay? That doesn't.
I love it. An attorney overseeing the ad hoc committee.
That'd be great. And from a timing standpoint, we don't need a named committee member today. Is that correct? We're not pinching any schedules or anything.
No, sir.
Okay.
The contracts don't expire until May. We're just trying to get out in front of it to make sure that we don't have to deal with anything.
Sounds good. Well, Mr. McKinnick, thank you for. In the event that works out, I hope we have an attorney on the ad hoc committee. Okay, did we cover everything else?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Presentation? All right, thank you.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. All right. Moving along, I think we're done with the presentations, unless there are any other comments or questions, and we'll move on to committee action items. We have 2 items, and the first is agenda item A. We have Mr. Bracken here. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Greg Bracken, Director of Operations Support, ADA Officer. Before you today, we have a action item to authorize the Chief Executive Officer to award a contract for our Voice of the Customer surveys. As you know, we redid our success plan recently, and we have some new matrices involved, and we have our new goals and missions that are posted on the board behind you. And as we go out to gather those matrices, we did put out an RFP to get a solicitation out there. And TransPro, who was our provider of our first round of surveys last year, actually have done 2 for us, was the winner again. So we entered into best and final offer negotiation with them, and were able to reduce the price by about 14% over their last year's hourly rate. So we did negotiate down with them. So this is a 3-year contract with a 2-year option, is why the dollar amount is so high. We'll be conducting 2 surveys per year at about $47,200 or $46,720 per survey. So that's why it comes in such a higher dollar, because it is for a good 5-year contract deal. So, any questions?
Okay. Are there any questions on the item?
Oh, I did want to add too that we are going to expand the survey a little further this year too. We are going to go to HART Flex, and we are going to go to HART Plus customers as well. So that's on top of our fixed route system that we had previously done in the past years.
Great. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Mr. McCann, you're recognized.
So the 467 number is the max over a 5-year period, not a 3-year period.
Correct. Okay. This is the max of the contract, so I had to include the 2-year option in there as a caveat as well.
Okay. And could you just briefly, Greg, describe the process that they go through to conduct a survey? Like, are they riding on the buses, or I just don't have a feel for how this is done.
That's exactly what they do. I believe last time they did a total of 500 surveys on the buses. They identify the routes on a public schedule that we agreed to prior to them coming to town. And then they go out and survey the customer's tablet, small questionnaires, and I believe last time we gave them a free ride pass for taking the survey for their next ride. But yes, they did actual 500 individual surveys out on all of the selected routes. Yes, sir.
How do they pick the people to interview on the
It's bus? A random sampling. Yeah, there's no set. I think it's every 3rd customer, I think, is the one that they use as they come on the bus. So that's very random.
Yeah, great questions all around, Mr. Mechanic. Thank you. And having seen the presentations, I can't remember, Councilman Donahue, if you got to see, I believe some of the voice of the customer surveys. They just did the data that's revealed, and that is just it's great. It's really great. I look forward to.
I'm really happy to hear that that's the method, is to actually be on the bus.
Yes. I really was pleasantly not surprised, but just enlightened is the best way when I saw the presentation and the data that was gathered and the way they gathered it. So I look forward to, if this were to move forward, which hopefully it would, that we would all see more good work. So thank you.
This is 500 customers per survey or 500 customers per year?
500 customers per survey. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And it'll be really interesting too. This will be following our Mission Max implementation too, so we'll actually get to hear what our customers are having to say about the changes that we put out there. So looking forward to it.
Great. Okay.
Of course, unfortunately, you're not hearing from the people who are not on the bus because of changes on
Actually, that's the next phase. Mr. Sandusky has the voice of the community coming up as well. And that will be covering those that are not on the buses. So we have taken that into consideration too. So we do want to hear from all the county residents.
Okay,
good job. Great. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Mr.
Motion to approve item 2A.
Great. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay, the ayes carried. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 2. Or B, excuse me. The second agenda item is item B. And we have Mr. Fetzer here from Maintenance.
Good morning. Jim Fetzer, Director of Maintenance. I'm seeking board authorization this morning to purchase a replacement paratransit vehicle. A revised copy of the board item has been distributed. I believe it's shown in pink in front of you. There was a price change that I had to make on the item. The proposed vehicle is a 2017 model Chevrolet van with a cutaway style body. Seating capacity of 8 passengers and 2 wheelchair tie-downs. The vehicle is being purchased through the Florida Department of Transportation TRIPS program, and the total cost of the unit is $72,949 and is being funded with 2015 CNG rebate funding. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Fetzer. Are there any questions on the item? Okay. With that, thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have a motion to move this to the board for full approval?
I move to approve.
Any,
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay, the motion carries. All right, next on the agenda, we're moving through quickly here, is the monthly financial review by, and I would just like to acknowledge and welcome our interim CEO, Mr. Seward. And thank you for doing a great job on prepping for this, your first official public hearing. Doing great so far. Thank you. Yeah. It's not over
yet, but. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee members. This morning, I just want to talk very briefly about our financial report for the month of December. Typically, the beginning of the year, we're heading into the end of the first quarter of our fiscal year. This report that you have in your packet today is through October, which is really the first month of the fiscal year, so it isn't all that telling. What I want to draw your attention to is in addition to our monthly financial report that you'll be seeing every month, and it's actually on the back of the report itself. During Mission Max, we made a commitment to both the community and the board that there was going to be an estimated cost savings of just over $6 million. And what I want to do in the monthly financials is to report where we are on tracking for those savings throughout the year. We essentially balanced the budget for FY18 based on those Mission Max savings. There was also a commitment to drop $3 million to fund balance at the end of this fiscal year. So for us to be able to attain that drop to fund balance or our piggy bank, we have to meet these Mission Max savings through the year. So we will be reporting every month on exactly where we are on meeting that estimate. So I'm happy to report that through almost the entire first quarter of this fiscal year, we are tracking exactly where we thought we would be on our Mission Max savings, which means we are tracking that savings exactly where we want to be right now. However, based on the comments that you heard earlier on the November service changes, or February service changes, which was November, February service changes, we will be looking very closely at the aligning of the approval of the MOU, the reimbursement from the county, and the availability of county funds, because that will sway where we track on financing through the next few months. So we're working really closely over the next few weeks. We'll be working very closely with the county on solidifying that time frame to get the memorandum of understanding through obviously the Board of County Commissioners and back to our board, so we can meet not only the February 25th deadline for the implementation of service changes, but also it's minimalizing impact on our financial situation. Also in the report, cash on hand, we report that every month. This is October. As you'll see, we were down to $8.4 million. I'm happy to report that as of today, we have $34.396 million sitting in the bank in cash. And that is almost 100% due to the fact that we've started our annual ad valorem infusion from the taxpayers of Hillsborough County.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Sure. Let me interrupt you. But on that note real quick, so your graph here described has our monthly cash flow, and as I understand it, that bump we just saw, I mean, going from 8 million to 34, that's part of that cycle, and we talked about that
correct
earlier in the year. So it's good to see that come to fruition.
Oh, and we will continue to talk about it and talk about it and talk
Thank
about
you.
it.
Great. Excellent.
I appreciate that report. That's very, on a monthly basis with this. Mission Max was so huge that to tell us the information monthly is going to be very important.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Yeah, Mr. McCann.
How are the discussions going with the county on the MOU?
Yeah, it's a positive discussion. It's just a matter of availability of staff to communicate the changes to the Board of County Commissioners. Their staff is presenting that recommendation of service changes that you saw this morning to each commissioner. I'll have the discussions with our sitting board members that are commissioners in the next 2 weeks on that process, and then working with county staff on solidifying the construct of the MOU itself. A couple of things that we want to make sure of is, as you heard this morning, we have already implemented some of that service, and we want to make sure that there's some type of clawback in that MOU to be able to get back and get reimbursed for the service that we already put in place in October. So we haven't got to the real nuts and bolts detail of the MOU development yet, but it'll be coming in the next couple of weeks, and I feel confident on January 8th we'll be able to report some positive movement.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll all look forward to that, and thank you for your work on both the financial side and just the operational, just keeping things moving. So we look forward to it. Hopefully we'll have some good news on the 8th. Okay. All right, well, everyone, I believe, and thank you, Jeff. I believe with that we are adjourned. Thank you, and have happy holidays and Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Yeah.